Relly Mane.
Hey, what's up, Rick?
How you feel, man?
Man, I feel blessed, man. I feel
Well, welcome
great,
to
man.
the show. Welcome to the Look Like Somebody podcast. I'm your host, Ricky C. Simmons. Listen, y'all, I want y'all to hit that subscribe button. This is very important that we get this messages out to as many people as we can, because I think it's very important, because our society has went in a direction and is going in a direction that is not very positive all the time, but we have positive messages here. We do cover some things that aren't always positive, but we always try to wrap up with a positive note. And today, I got a guest that's like a little brother to me. I'm just going to bring him in, and we're just going to go right at it. Relly Mane.
Hey, what's up, Rick?
How you feel, man?
Man, I feel blessed, man. I feel
Well, welcome
great,
to
man.
the show.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, you know what? Terrell is his name, but I always call him Relly Mane. And Relly, here's the deal, man. I want everyone to know what I know, so we're gonna take some steps back and talk about your. Where are you from?
So I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. You know, born in at Emmanuel Hospital. You know, and then around 5-6 years old, my mother moved. She's from Council Bluffs. My mother's Mexican. My dad's black. My mother moved to Council Bluffs. She's from there. When I was about 5 or 6, and went to school there. Kind of came back and forth, and then you know, ultimately moved back to Omaha. You know,
So basically, you grew up in Omaha, though.
Yeah, Omaha. Yeah, Omaha.
Okay.
The whole, you know, Omaha, Council Bluffs the whole way. You know, I always shout out Council Bluffs because that's a part of who I am as well.
Right.
But
right.
you know, I've you know, done most things in Omaha, Nebraska. So.
Well, really, here's the thing that really interested me in having you on the show. I want you to, you know, like I always try to talk about things that are real, you know,
Yes,
and you've always been that. You've always been real with me, and that means a lot to me. So I want you to explain to everybody that's listening, even though you had to go through some adversity, I want to talk a little bit about the adversity. I want to talk about the transition from adversity into positive, and then we'll pretty much finish up with all the things you're into now.
Okay.
Is that
okay.
cool?
Yeah, that's
Are you
fine,
comfortable with that?
Man, I'm transparent, man. I'm gonna give you what I got. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Well, see, and that's what I like, because I think real people can relate to that. You know, when you're not real, people can also see that.
Yes, sir.
So growing up, what was your upbringing like? I mean, you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, so, man, I grew up. It's crazy. So, my mother and father was together, and then, you know, he was trying to get himself together, so he was kind of in and out of our lives. You know, I grew up, you know, I would say that my mother, you know, of course, raised by a single mother, because my father, like I said, was in and out and eventually was out, you know.
Yeah.
But, and I'll circle back to that.
Okay.
You know? But so we didn't have the most money. You know, she, you know, eventually had 4 boys with this man on her own. You know, first it was me and my brother that's 11 months younger than us. She just did the best she could, you know. And as we got older, she would be working so many jobs. We was kind of raising ourselves, you know. It was, but before that, you know, we grew up. She had a house, and then you know, it was rent. She was renting. It was small. Then she moved to. We had to stay with cousins, you know, aunts, grandparents, you know, just sharing rooms. We didn't grow up, you know, rich by any means. You know what I'm saying? We grew up.
It was 4 boys, you said?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wow.
No girls through her, you know. But I do have sisters from my dad through other women, you know, that I'm close to. But and like I said, we can circle back to that. But yeah. So it was just a struggle, you know, growing up, you know, feeling like we didn't have as much as some of our, you know, friends and cousins, and you know, still trying to learn to be confident through all of that. I was telling someone the other day, it took a while to gain confidence, because I would feel inferior to a lot of people. You know, even if we go to gatherings, I would feel weird even just to go get a plate or some food or something. You know, I would feel like nervous and for no reason, because like, as I know now, you know, no one is I'm not inferior to anyone. You know, I'm just as good as, no matter the status or whatever they got going on. But so we grew up, you know, she tried to do her best. And then, you know, religion was a huge part of her trying to bring us up. Like, you know, she became a Jehovah's Witness. And but also that was a challenge because there's a lot of belief system and different things you can and can't do in that religion. So now we not only are poor, but we have some things as far as religious wise that had people looking at us different too, you know. So it was just some things.
I understand that part because Jehovah's Witness, I don't know a lot about it, but what little I do know, they definitely had a label that went with them.
Right. And you know, so but I will say that kind of taught me to be a spiritual person and kind of molded me to my own relationship with God. You know, I always tell people I'm not really religious, but I'm spiritual. You know what I'm saying?
I agree with that.
So I talk to whoever created me and all this stuff around me and helps, you know, guide and direct me to where I need to be. That's who I talk to every day, you know?
Right.
And so I'm thankful for that for sure. But you know, it wasn't always easy, you know, and then you know, my mother, I know she loved us, but she would treat my brother a little different than me. And my pops would always say that's because I reminded her of him more than my brother. You know what I'm saying? My brother looked more Mexican than me. You know, I look more black or whatever. But
I got you.
And I'm not saying it's a race thing. It just reminded her, you know, of him, I guess. You know, but long story short, we had, you know, then moving, you know, to Council Bluffs, we grew up around predominantly white population. So that had its challenges as I grew up going through school. You know, I dealt with racism. You know, we came up, you know, fighting a lot. And then, but I will say it also educated me and allowed me to be more cultured so that I can interact with all walks of life, you know, from, you know, being from two different races and then being surrounded by, you know, Caucasians. It's like I can deal and interact with anybody, you know, and of course, I paid attention in school, even though and that's the other thing. I didn't do the best in school. They always told my mother I was smart. I just need to focus or come to class too, you know. So, and then and then we was fighting and stuff too. So it was just, you know, I didn't end up graduating, but I got my GED the same, like maybe I think like the next year I was supposed to graduate. I got my GED the following year after that. And
you know what? I want to say this while I'm thinking about it. The fact that you was raised the way you were raised and you had to deal with the adversity that you had to deal with. You know, even though school was not your first priority, apparently.
Right.
You know, you had the mindset that you needed to at least know that you need to get your GED.
Right.
You know, seeing a lot of times, man, I meet people all the time that when they going through adversity in life, they think more about woe is me versus what can I do to better myself. And what I get from this is, man, you was going through it. I mean, you was going through some trials and tribulations, but you didn't have the word I'm looking for is you didn't give up.
Right, like you always say, there ain't no quit button. You know, my quit button broke. Yeah, my quit button broke,
man.
And I'm glad you said that because I kind of, you know, I skipped over some you know, very major details. You know, growing up that way, you know, without a father figure, really no positive male role models. You know, I had uncles and all that, but they came up, even on my Mexican side and black side, came up with their own challenges and came up in the streets doing, you know, illegal things. So, you know, I was 13. I think my brother 12. I had a cousin on my dad's side, got out of prison. He started giving us some, you know, weed already bagged up, ready to sell. So we started doing that to get money because we poor, you know. So
right. So,
you know, that lasted for a while. You know, then we started drinking and smoking at you know, 13 years old. And then as the years went on, I just gradually kind of learned that game. So that was my education more than focusing on my education, you know.
Correct. I got you.
And then I ended up, you know, like I said, didn't graduate from school, ended up becoming, you know, pretty successful illegally. And then, you know, kind of, you know, learn that. And then, you know, as I don't want to jump too far ahead, but, you know, had a lifestyle that, might seem glamorous to some people if you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I hid it from a lot of people, you know. So when the day came, I eventually got in trouble, and we can get to that. You know, there was people writing letters to the judge and everything, you know, saying how good of a person I was, but they didn't know what I was doing.
What you was doing on the low.
Yeah, right. So that had its challenges, and so I always tell people, you know, I always speak about mentorship and having a mentor. And like I told you before, I never had one, so I kind of look at you as a mentor because you know, I've come to you with some challenging times, you know, when we first met and me just starting out a business and you know, seeing you do your thing and you know, I remember one time I was going through something and you was like, man, Relly Mane, you said you ain't in the streets no more. You can't handle things that way. You got to take it to God. And I was like, you know, That's right. And I took heed to that, and I've used that advice more times than I can count since I first met you.
You know, the fact that you mentioned that, let me say this while I'm thinking about it. It's important because, see, a lot of times I do mentor quite a few people, and I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge me as a mentor because that's kind of what I love to do. But I'll be honest with you, I'm working on the very things that I'm asking you to work on.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
because we know how to handle things the wrong way.
Man.
Matter of fact, I think I have a PhD in making mistakes. So I understand how to make mistakes and deal with things the wrong way.
Yes,
but
sir.
the challenge came when I started trying to make things, deal with things the correct way. That's not easy.
That's it. That's exactly it. You know, before I just told someone the other day, my grandmother, she, you know, like I said, we came up fighting, you know, and it wasn't just white people or nothing, but we came up fighting, you know, and my grandma, she spoke Spanish. She always say, sit on your hands, hijo or mijo, you know, that's like my son or whatever. She was, and I, with that, she didn't mean physically sit on our hands. She meant, you know, sit on your hands, like don't resort to that, you know, sit on your hands. Don't resort to using physical, you know, or violence or, you know, physical.
That's an interesting thing too, man, because I talked to quite a few people, and when you're raised a certain way, it's almost like breathing or drinking water.
Right.
You know, we know how to handle things that I think a lot of us I know in particular, I call it disrespect.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, disrespect brings out a whole different person. And unfortunately, the bad part about that upbringing for me was the consequences. You know, I know how to deal with things the wrong way, but I didn't like the consequences that came with that.
Right.
And that sounds like you, in a way, had a real similar setup. You know, I don't know. I don't want to speak on yours, but it sounds that way to me.
I could give you. So you're absolutely right. Coming up like that, it's like second nature. We came up, if you disrespect us, we're going to make sure you feel disrespected. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
To the point where sometimes I couldn't even sleep until I felt like I got my get back. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I never was the type of person to be an aggressor or start anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the problem with me when I was younger was I didn't care about consequences. You know, I didn't have a business or kids or family to think about.
Right.
I was just so I was wild, you know. And you know, I wasn't thinking about the consequences, but as things change, you know, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
There were some things that I had to think about before I reacted.
Right. And that's not easy to do. You know, I don't want to sit here and pretend that, man, you know, making the right choices and doing the right thing, especially at a young age, is easy to do because it's not.
Even these days.
It's still not, you know, but I tell people all the time, I work really hard at being positive. I work really hard at being happy. I work really hard at treating people the way I want to be treated. But the key for me on that particular thing is I don't expect it in return. That way I don't feel let down when, for example, hey, how you doing, young man? And they act like you didn't say nothing.
Right.
There was a time where I took that as some kind of way of disrespecting me.
Right.
Well, today when I say, what's happening, young man? And they keep walking, in my head I say, this show sucked to be them.
Right.
Because they going through something that ain't got nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I always tell cats they don't make them like they used to no more. You know what I'm saying? So
it's called old school, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even say old school, but definitely, you know, I got an old soul, you know. But
right. Well, you're a youngster. So.
I always tell people I want to make it to that age. I don't, you know, I used to look at people as old or this and that. Now I'm like, man, if I can live to be 199, I'm gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? That's just how it is. But you're right. You know, you hold the door open for somebody and they don't say thank you. They just walk right in like you were supposed to do that.
Yeah, like you work for the store.
Right. So it's like you got to learn to. It's like driving. You got to learn to drive for other people so you don't get into a wreck.
I call it defensive driving.
Yes, sir.
I mean, because actually, it's funny you said that because I was coming from Lincoln today up here and I'm driving. Man, I got the cruise set. I ain't in no hurry because I'm way early. And all of a sudden, for no reason, this car just jumps in my lane, you know, as they're turning on their signal. And, I mean, lucky for me, I ain't in a hurry.
Right.
You know,
right.
so I was able to adjust and see them. And, you know, and usually I can remember a time where that would be a problem for me.
Right.
You know, I got to catch up to them, and I got to let them know that they out of line. But today, I just stay behind them, man, because I really don't want any conflict today because I don't think that's going to solve anything for me.
Yeah, it won't, you know, and a lot of times you don't know what people are on these days, you know.
Correct.
I feel like everyone always, you know, I hate to bring it up like this, but everybody always, you know, keeps some protection.
Correct.
I'll call it that.
Yeah.
But usually it was our people and minorities that kept the protection. Now everybody got it on them. You don't know if it's the old lady, the old man next to you, and so you know you might go up there and feel like you need to tell them something, and they done told you something, and now you can't tell nobody nothing else no more.
Yeah, because you're not here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so you got to. It's the defensive driving, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is this: there's little certain things that I do in life, man. Now that when I was younger, I thought they didn't make sense at all, but now they make all the sense in the world. Like my big thing is. I try my best to always be prepared to not be in a hurry. I know sometimes that's impossible because you're doing, you know, everybody's got so much going on.
Right.
But for me personally, I try my best. Like I knew I had to be here today at 10. Well, at 9:15, I was sitting in the parking lot. You know, but that's just for me.
Right,
you know, I'm not saying anyone else should do that, but I have to do certain things in order to maintain what I need to maintain.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind, man. Because see, peace to me is priceless. Like I said before, I understand that everybody's got stuff going on. I'm not trying to, but I'm not psychic.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not trying to read their minds either.
Right,
so what I do is, my philosophy is I can kill time better than I can make up time.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, that's just me. I mean, I can sit in the parking lot and check my phone, answer some emails or text messages or whatever.
Right.
But if I'm trying to get here, I done told Relly Mane I'm going to meet him at 10. It's 10:15. I'm still halfway to.
You sound like me. That was me. I'm over here. Nah, but you know.
But see, you run a business too that sometimes doesn't. You can't be multiple places at once. But I know
if you figure that out. Let me know. Let me know how. If you figure out how to do that, please let me know.
But no, my deal is this, though, Relly, on a serious tip. I know that you've had challenging times. But as an adult, you got into some things that took your freedom.
Yes, sir. So I was in the streets. Like I said, seen some success illegally. And then, you know, you think that stuff's going to last for a long time, and guess what? It don't.
Right.
So, you know, I ran into some troubles with the law and ultimately lost 5 years of my freedom, you know, really 9 years because they put you on, when you get out, you get 4 years. It's called papers or you know, like supervised release. Yeah. When it's federal, they call it supervised release. But, you know, right before, when I got in trouble, you know, I got indicted or whatever, right before that, I feel like that's when my real spiritual awakening started to occur, you know, and and, you know, I always mess with music, but I started taking it serious, you know, but I was indicted, so it's like, how can I make it? You know, I got Timbaland, you know, from the East Coast, you know, super producer, emailing us and sending us messages and trying to do stuff with me. And can you fly to L.A.? I couldn't even fly nowhere because I'm indicted, but I didn't want to tell them I'm indicted, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
So I feel like it was like my world came crashing down. You can't do music. And that, you know, when I got indicted, I had 3 kids, you know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, 4, because 1 was born, you know, shortly before I went to prison, you know what I'm saying? So it was like my world was coming crashing down, but I was, you know, so I was trying to figure out what am I going to do? How can I provide? How can I provide for myself, my family, you know? And when I was away, like I first, you know, went in, one of my cellies was an old man, black man from Denver, Colorado. He used to ride around with $1 million in his briefcase, you know. And I'm like, why you ride with $1 million in your briefcase? He was like, because if I want to buy something, can't nobody tell me no, you know. And so he would teach me different things. But I went to my cell one time, and like when I first was in there, and you know, definitely feeling down, you know. I ain't a big crier, so I never cried, you know. But he was like, what's wrong, youngster? I was like, man, I'm in here. I was like, I can't do nothing for my family. And he's like, you can. He said, you can take this time away from him to better yourself. Yes. And then, you know, that would be an advantage to him. So he would teach me different things. And then just throughout the time, I feel like that molded me to how I was going to do my time.
Right.
I didn't play like games and all that, you know, guys playing cards and dominoes. I didn't do none of that. The only game I would play is chess, you know, and then, or basketball. But other than that, you know, I'm working out. You know, I went in super overweight too. I didn't grow up heavy or nothing, but I weighed 233 at this height. You know, I'm 5'6", you know, and I'm not the tallest person. And so I was looking more probably wide than I was tall, you know, but I started taking my health serious and started becoming more conscious of my appearance, which before I didn't. You know, I'd be at the party, shirt off, girls around, I don't care. But now I'm like, man, I look better than I did then, and I'll be more conscious now, you know. But anyways, so as time went on, I just started to take my time serious. And then they don't make you go to school. But, you know, I always would sign up for classes. And then eventually, you know, when my points dropped, I went to a low and I signed for the drug program. They sent me down to Texas. And I was there long enough to where they could pay for college for me. So I took some college courses through a community college in Dallas, Texas called Cedar Valley. Yeah. And that's where I got, you know, some education on business, sales, and marketing. And I got my graphic design certificate and stuff as well. So, and I got those in my office, you know, and we'll talk about when I start my business and all that. But, yeah, so that journey took me, like you said, lost my freedom. So I'm away from, you know, but I always made sure I wrote my kids, called them, you know, I always just tried to stay in their life, even though I was away from them. And I was constantly reading books and just educating myself for when I came back home. But, you know, it wasn't easy through that.
I was thinking about something like, I know during incarceration for myself, it was really, and I say this a lot, but a lot of people, you know, they don't really get it. But I learned who I was while incarcerated. And what I mean by that is, it's like, and I'm not blaming nobody. I put myself there. Okay, I'll take that. But I will say this. I took advantage of the time there to make some changes because Ricky's way of doing things was not working when I was free.
That's true.
So I basically learned how to live. I never had patience. Patience was always something that I struggled with. But in my opinion, I'm a spiritual guy as well. I believe God put me somewhere where I had to learn patience. It's something about being incarcerated. I don't encourage anyone to go get incarcerated, but I'm just saying for me, I did the math on this, a total of 10 years of my life, I saw Santa Claus, so to say, behind bars. And it dawned on me, if I can sit in here and not get in trouble, not catch cases, and be productive, why don't I just take this same little schedule or regiment or whatever you want to call routine and take it home with me and apply it when I'm free. And that's exactly what I did. And, you know, I can actually say for myself, this past June 4th was 16 years clean and sober living. Man. And I've had people. That's all right. That's big. Yeah. You know, it's funny because I know people like, dude, you got 16 years clean and sober? Dude, I remember when you couldn't get 16 minutes or 16 seconds.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say to you is, man, I'm proud of you that you went in there and you used that time wisely, because since your release, that's what I want to talk about now. Since your release, what's been going on with Relly Mane?
And so just to touch on a couple things, like before that, like I agree with you, you know, that's when I learned myself the most. Yo, all you got is time to think in there, you know what I'm saying? Right. But it's just like the streets, though. If you hang out with 9 dummies, you'll be the 10th. So there's a whole bunch of ignorance in there. You know, I've seen people go in and get more years. I've seen people go in and never come home, you know? So it's an eye-opener, and you in there by yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And so nobody can do that time for you. So when you in there, like you said, for those 10 years or 10 Santa Clauses, you know, we call them calendars, you know. Yeah. I'm in there for those calendars every minute, every hour, every week, month, you know, year, you have to do. Nobody can do it for you. And if we, you know, we've been sitting here, I don't know how many minutes, but, you know, it's a whole other world in there. You know that. So, you know, I took heed to that. So we'll fast forward. So then I get released, and I felt like I'm going to go out here and kill it. I got every resource known to me. If I'm doing all this from in here, I'm going to go out there and it didn't work like that.
No, never does.
It didn't work like that. So I'm like, man, you know, people don't want to hire you. And then you know, you get out, and I got kids, so my kids think I'm just back with money and everything. So it's like, they don't know that, or they know, but they don't care about you. It's just the way they asking for everything coming out, you know. So it's like, man, then you trying to get on your feet. You think you're getting out ready to blow up and do the biggest things you can do, and it's a reality check, because you got a huge mountain to climb.
Oh, absolutely.
And you starting at the bottom. I'll tell people, you know, people that's saying, I got it out the mud. I tell people I had to climb up to the mud and then get it out the mud. You know what I'm saying? I was under the mud. Yeah, I was under the mud. So it was like, it had its challenges. And to be honest, I was close to being part of the, you know, recidivism rate. But it took some things to occur for me to really get on track. A lot of praying, and I got out here and you know, tried to do things the way I felt like I should, and then, you know, trying to cheat the system too, you know, because but it doesn't work that way. And I'm telling everybody that's watching, you know, these things are put in place. There's some things put in place to help you succeed, but also they ain't gonna do nothing for you. You got to do it yourself.
You got to do it all yourself.
Everything yourself. You know what I'm saying? So, it's funny. I got an amazing wife, but I got to a point where I had a seriously toxic relationship before I got everything on the right track with this business stuff, Rick. And it's funny that we talking about it, because, you know, I've been married. September will be 7 years. You know what I'm saying? Me married is a big deal. You know, we'll touch on that too.
Right.
But so in that relationship, I almost lost my freedom again. And you can't tell me in 100 years I'll be going back to prison. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you know, it was a toxic relationship. She would put her hands on me. I protect myself. I was so degraded, or, you know, my self-esteem was so low at me that I'm pretty confident and all of that.
Right.
Broke me down, you know, so to where some of my guys would be like, man, why you with this girl? She don't even know who she with, you know, but she didn't know the things I did before. She didn't live through that. She didn't, you know, all she knows is this cat that's out of prison trying to get back on his feet. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, had me feeling like I was a woman beater and all this stuff. And then, but it dawned on me, you know, her mom slapped me in the face, all kinds of negative stuff. We'll just say that. Yeah, and one of my, so I ended up, her mom, you know, had said I pointed a pistol at her. Lie, just a straight up lie, you know. And so I'll go on my jog one day. I come, you know, I used to keep my key fob on my drawstring on my shorts, you know, and then I go get my keys to go in out of my car. When I got back, I go grab my keys. I turn around, 2 sheriffs got the guns drawn on me. Get down. I was like, whoa, first thing, you got the wrong guy. They said, no, you know, you're under arrest for terroristic threats. I'm like, terroristic threats? I ain't threatening nobody, you know. And they show me my picture. So I'm over here trying to figure out what's going on. You know, I ain't threatening nobody. You know, fast forward, they take me down and said that, you know, her mom, I ain't gonna say no names, said I pointed a pistol at her a few days before. I'm like, man, I ain't pointing no, you know, everybody that knows me, and I'm just being transparent, like we said at the beginning of this show. I used to keep a gun on me, like I keep, you know, fresh pair of drawers on, you know, like, and that was just me, the lifestyle I was living. But I wasn't out here, like I said, being an aggressor or none of that. But I'm gonna protect myself for sure, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that was like an eye opener, because I feel like if, as much as I hated that, it was like God was like, you need this to get back on track, because if you don't get back on track, you about to be away for longer. And I was already blessed to only get 5 years, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and you know how that goes, you know what I'm saying? So during that time, you know, I had a whole bunch of other negative things happen, but I started just getting really, and I ain't use jail to get spiritual, because I always talk to God every day, you know, but I started getting more serious, you know what I'm saying? And then this how life worked. Excuse me. So I get out. My brother came and bought me out. Appreciate that, you know what I'm saying, and had to pay him back or whatever. But I'm fighting my case from outside, you know, and it came down to DNA, and because rewind. So they searched my car and found a gun in the car, but it was in a stash spot. They had to take the car apart to find it, you know what I'm saying? And so they found the gun. And they swabbed me when I was in county and said it was 1,000,001 chances it was someone else's through DNA. And like I said, I was on the verge of doing some, you know, living a lifestyle that would have landed me back, you know, hence, you know, toting a firearm and all that, you know, as a felon, you know. So, anyways, I'm out fighting my case. I go to court, and my uncle, man, shout out to my uncle, man, Rick, you know, and he, man, but not this, you know, he lives in Atlanta, but he was with me the whole time, just giving me advice and everything. And they brought 3 years as a plea agreement. And I was like, ain't no way I'm going to jail for something I didn't do. I'm going to prison. This is state. I was federal before. This is state. I ain't never did no state time. So I was like, man, I signed he was like, nephew, sign it. He was like, you know, if not, you know, they're going to give you 25 years, you know, and this and that. If you lose the trial, I was like, man, I can beat this. I was like, man, he was like, and this is before the DNA even came back, that, you know, like, so it was 1 in a million at first. So, long story short, I played 3 years day for day. Had by time for sentencing. Family had a big get together the day before. Next day was my sentencing. I'm with my you know, my wife. She wasn't even my wife at the time. And we were dropping off our Marissa, you know, our daughter, you know. Shout out to all my kids though, but we was in the driveway dropping off at the babysitter, because I'm getting ready to go to sentencing. I'm thinking I'm gone for 3 years.
Yeah, right.
My lawyer called me. He said, "So you got sentencing today?" And I was like, "Yeah," you know. He was like, "Well, I wanted to let you know they redid the DNA on a few cases." He was like, "And some stayed the same and some changed." And he was like, "Your case is one that came back changed." I was like, so what's that mean? You know, I'm taking it back. Like, I don't know what's going on. My first thought is, okay, I'm about to take this to trial now. You know, he was like, it went from 1 in a million to 1 in 4. So it could have been anybody's gun.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was like, what's that mean? And he was like, well, the judge, he is like, he don't think you're a bad person or anything. He was like, he's willing to give you probation. And, cause you know, they were looking at my record, you know, they're like, Your Honor, since he's been out, he hasn't even had a traffic violation, you know, before that, you know, so
he was on the right track.
Yeah, you know. On paper anyways, you know, but so I was like, okay, he wants to give me probation. I was like, you know, what about trial? He's like, well, you're not going to win at trial. The car is still in your name. It was found in, you know, it's just a fight, you know, you're really risking it. So, so I went in, you know, they let me withdraw my plea. Then like a month later I went and pled. They wanted me to plead guilty. So I pled guilty to they call it prohibited in attempted possession of a firearm. So I don't even know what attempted is, but attempted possession of a firearm. So, and when I got that sentence, I withdrew my, I pled guilty to prohibited and attempted possession of a firearm. They gave me 5 years probation. And the judge said this, he said, now, are you sure you want to take this 5 years probation? He said, you can take these few years, or, you know, you can take this 5 years, but if you mess up, I'm going to give you a lot of years, like 25 years.
Right.
And I was like, you know, I'm going to take this probation. Mind you, I didn't have a business, nothing. I had just left my ex. Matter of fact, you know, like I said, her mom done slapped me. My guy was there trying to help me get my stuff. They had hidden my stuff. You know, my daughter don't want you. I was like, I don't want your daughter. I'm here to get my stuff. You know, but long story short, I was sleeping on my mother's couch.
Yeah.
My girl at the time, she wasn't even my girl. She was just coming around. We was cool, you know, and it wasn't even a physical thing, like a sex thing, because she had a purity ring on. She was fed up, I guess, with people too, you know.
Right, right. Everybody got something.
Right. So here I am sleeping on my mother's couch, fighting for my freedom. Then, you know, I got out of prison. I had my child support had racked up from the first bid. Right. So I'm working. You know, I was doing an electrician apprenticeship, and I would work all week, Rick, and my check might be like $27. Yeah. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, so I was just like, man, this is crazy, but I'm not putting two and two together at the time. So she coming to visit me one day. And we hear boop, boop. And I look outside, my car getting repoed in front of the girl that's coming to talk to me. Oh, talk about adding insult to injury. So look, I'm going somewhere with this, you know. So, okay. But you know, she was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I was like, "You know, I handle all my own problems. You know, I don't really go to people like that, you know." And so they, you know, I'm riding around her. So then the sentencing come, and I get 5 years probation, and then you know, my uncle's like, you know how blessed you are, this and that. But when he told me that I was willing to withdraw my plea, I just told you I ain't a big crier. I cried when he said, gotcha, they're gonna let me withdraw my plea, because I knew it was God. I didn't do nothing to get these people to redo my DNA or none of, you know, like on these cases. I was just so thankful, you know, and but I knew it was God, you know, and I felt like that was the opportunity for me to get my stuff together. So
you took the 5 years.
Took the 5 years.
And what did you do with that?
Whew. So this is where it gets interesting. So, so now I'm working at this job. I had hustled up a little bit of money working legally, everything legal. Got a little 1-bedroom apartment, you know. Me and my wife. Then me and my wife got married. Then we, like, you know, like 9 months later, we had our daughter together, you know. And we had a small wedding. It wasn't no big wedding or nothing like that. Just a small, simple thing with parents or whatever. And it was kind of spur of the moment too. Right. So, you know, then I'm working, and man, Rick, it would be days like I just got my car repoed. Oh, and that was the other thing. I called the child support, and I was like, man, what's going on? I'm working. I'm only getting this much money. And the lady's like, my apologies. You're working, you know, child support's from Omaha. You working in Council Bluffs. Both states were taking money, and they weren't communicating to each other. I was like, my car ended up getting repoed. She was like, I am so sorry. She's like, we can't do nothing about it. This, and I was like, yeah. So I was, you know, I was hurt, you know, but I was like, you know what? I still didn't. My quit button broke, like you said, like we talked about. Broke. So we ain't quitting. So I ended up, I would work for a place called Court Furniture, and I just want to shout them out. You know, it's a Berkshire Hathaway company. So, you know, Warren Buffett owns them, and they really take care of their employees. I was working there when I was fighting the case, and not once when I went to court or anything did I ever have to miss pay. They paid me every single time. You know, that's how God worked. That because I had left the electrician company because how they was paying me. You know, so there I learned a skill about moving stuff. It's not a moving company, and it's not a rent to own. They just do term leases on furniture, like student housing, corporate housing, or insurance housing. Something's wrong with you, like a flood or fire. Your insurance relocates you. Yeah. They go in and furnish everything down to the toilet paper, Rick. I'm talking about pictures on the wall, whatever you want, silverware. So I learned a skill. Let's just say that. Okay. So eventually, you know, I worked there for a few years and became a manager, and I started learning the process. I'm gonna start my own moving company. You know, I just kind of talked about it. You know, I didn't really know. Right. And then a friend came that I knew, and I was telling him, yeah, I want to start my own moving company. And he was like, man, my guy, he's about to start next week. He's not from here. He's from Pennsylvania, but he kind of got a little moving company going on the side too. Y'all need to meet. So he starts, we chop it up and or talk, you know, and we start doing things together. We sit down and we got the moving thing, and he had everything basically. So I'm just kind of helping him, and he had the Google page in his name, the phone number, everything. We'd work all day, Rick, and then go do our job at night. I'd get home midnight or later, 2 a.m, then wake right back up, and be at work. Some days if we had to go to Des Moines, Iowa, we had to be there at 6, or if we were in town, we had to be there at 8. So I would do that. And there was times, like I said, I had a car issue. I would walk. And I'm talking about, I think I looked at the miles. It was like 9 miles or 11 miles after working all day. Walk home because, sometimes people want to give you rides. Sometimes they don't. And I don't want to ask nobody and be bothering people.
Yourself.
So, I would ask. Sometimes the people act funny over there. So I just I'm going to walk. I ain't tripping. So these are just parts of my success story, So
but that's the part I want to get to because I really want people to understand. Yes, you went through a lot of stuff,
ton of stuff.
Yeah,
so
and we probably don't have enough time to go through all of it.
We're gonna have to,
but I want to talk about the success.
Okay, so let's fast forward. So then, my guy said, COVID comes. Mind you, I'm on probation. 2020, COVID comes. We started the moving company into 2019 together. COVID comes. I've been there. Like I said, I was a manager. My partner gets laid off from where we're working. He comes to me and said, I want to be a truck driver, man, so I think I'm going to have to let my part of the company go. So I ended up having my attorney draw off the paperwork. I asked him like 5 times. And he didn't want to do it, so I had my attorney draw off the paperwork. I became 100% owner like July 2020. And then I ended up putting in my 2 weeks like August, September 2020. But it was about August because I ended up getting the office at where I met you at.
Modern Work.
Yeah. Shout out to Modern Work. I still got an office there to this day, but I ended up getting an office there and starting my own moving company. However, when I started it, before I got the office and all that, I didn't have a bunch of money saved up. Like I said, I was still going through my own struggles.
Right.
And so I would every day, I put my 2 weeks in, but I've been there so long, I ended up getting paid for 3 weeks. I just had to sign a piece of paper. I didn't have to go to work though, because I had so much time built up, vacation and all that.
Right.
So for those 3 weeks, I was, I was racking my brain, looking up how to get my own Google page, I lost all of our reviews because everything was in his name. So I figured all that out, thank God. And I always tell people, when it comes from God, it's effortless.
Right.
It don't seem like that hard, you got to put in the work, but it's almost effortless. So I got the truck. You saw I had the truck.
Right.
I got the office. I got the stuff going. Now, boom, I'm up and running. Got a moving company.
And what was the name of that moving company?
Elite Movers. Shout out Elite Movers.
There
you know
you
what
go.
I'm saying? We've been wrong. Made it through COVID. You know what I'm saying? And all of that. And then we would do out-of-state moves. Rick, I'm on probation. I'd have to get basically a permission slip signed from my PO. So I'd have to get it's called a travel permit.
Right.
And I'd have to give them my itinerary. And my PO was really cool. And she would sign off on it. And I basically built my first business, broke as heck, during COVID, on probation, you know what I'm saying? And but with a lot of responsibilities and sometimes as I was building, I felt like I was the only person that believed in myself, Rick.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
a lot of people don't want to give you credit when you're trying to start anyway because they don't have the courage to do it, so they don't want to see anyone else do it.
Right. People
but not only did you start this company, you did this and you're still doing it.
Yes, sir.
And
got a move going on right now as we speak. My guys, before I came here, I had to get them situated and came over here.
And not only did you start this moving company, you have something else you're doing.
Yeah, so I started a home improvement business about 2 years ago. Okay. And that kind of I couldn't even tell you the first thing about it at first, but it's, I ended up going to take a class. Some people had kind of pushed me to go do a water restoration class and get certified for that because they said it's, pretty good business. And they said, you need to do it. So I was like, I went down to Georgia, did that with one of my guys. Same thing kind of happened. We were supposed to do business together. He ended up going, now he runs plants. That's a great friend of mine still. Both of them are my guys still, my other business partner too. But so I was like, man, what am I going to do? I got this license and for water restoration, for, flood damage and all that. Mm-hmm. I said, why not just use that as one of the services we provide and do home improvement so I can, start doing houses and all that. And I noticed there was a void because my guy that I was supposed to start the business with was working for some designers and they were having these, below average contractors doing work for them and actually ruining stuff and costing them money, you know? So I said, I can fill that void somehow. And I was like, I know people that do the work. I can get some guys to do the work. I'm willing to do whatever. You know, I did some stuff helping my uncles and stuff when I was younger, you know, coming up, you know, as a youngster, doing all kinds of odd jobs. That's another thing I really didn't mention. I was doing odd jobs as I was doing illegal stuff, you know? But,
right.
So yeah, I got that going, and we just finished up a couple of kitchen remodels, but we got a basement. Yeah, I got that going on right now. We're in the process of remodeling the basement.
I think what I really wanted people to get out of this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, through all the struggles, all the adversity, all the things, the challenges, whether you inherited or created it,
right?
Your quit button being broke allowed you to start a couple of businesses, basically, and being very productive and actually having success.
Yes.
Is that what I'm getting from what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't quit when I was going through these things I spoke about, but also I had to put in the work, man. I had to teach myself. Like I said, I didn't know the first thing about running a contract business or a move. I'm still learning things about running business, you know?
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, my quit button isn't broke. The only thing I inherited was the struggle, for real. Right. And then the things that I went through that weren't as pleasurable as you know, whether it was going through prison or whatever, all the trials and tribulations and turmoil I went through was actually caused by my own decisions. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because this is the thing, Rick. If you and I come up, or, you know, I'll just speak for myself. If I'm coming up and I don't have someone kind of showing me the right and wrong, and the things that I am being showed by the people I look up to are wrong, but they feel right. But in society's world, they're wrong, but they feel right, and I'm gaining from them, then I don't feel like I'm doing any wrong, because my mind was conditioned and I was trained to do these things to benefit myself, not thinking of others or not even thinking about the community.
Right.
So now when I see youngsters, you know, 12, 13, even high schoolers. I even talk to adults, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the youngsters, I tell them, you're at an age where you can be anything you want to be in life, but it's all about the decisions you make, the company you keep, and it's not about your circumstances, because I know about coming from nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's all about your decisions you make, the company you keep, and how much you believe in yourself and your spiritual system. And I'm not telling you to go out there and believe what I believe or believe in who I believe in.
Right.
I just want you to go out there and whatever makes you better, you believe in that.
Yes.
And you got to do that research. Nobody else can do it for you.
And see, in today's society, I just, you know, I kind of want to make this point while we're talking about it is, see, a lot of people feel like when you make bad choices, we're just going to stay with that part. When you make bad choices to put yourself in bad situations, whether it be incarceration, whether it be in trouble with the criminal justice system, period. When you make these bad choices, if you're still alive, there's still hope.
Man.
And a lot of times when you make these choices, you have to understand that people are going to judge you if you have never been in any trouble.
Right.
So if you make some bad choices, I'll be the first one to admit this. When I made my bad choices and people judged me, I earned that.
Right.
But the catch is, just because someone judges you and someone puts you down, that ain't got nothing to do with what you're going to do next.
Nothing.
I mean, matter of fact, I kind of turned that into a positive. I almost feel kind of some kind of way when you don't talk about me. You know, I feel like I'm not doing enough.
That's what I just listened to someone the other day. They said, if you ain't got no haters, figure out how to get you some.
Oh, yeah, man.
You know?
And I love them. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but I really do love haters, because they're really a great source of motivation.
And nobody's hating on somebody that's not doing anything.
No, I haven't seen nobody. I haven't seen nobody hating on people that ain't doing nothing.
Exactly.
So when people are talking about you, and this is for anybody out there that's going through tough time, just don't stop.
Right.
Yeah, keep working, do whatever you got to do, because the point is, it's when they stop talking about you That's when you need to get work.
Yeah, then you're in trouble. But and I'm glad you brought that up, because I've dealt with that so much. Even lately, I learned a long time ago. Even when I said I was going through that stuff when I was fighting that last case.
Yeah,
there were so many people talking about me, and I had not only had I went through that stuff with my ex, I went through the stuff with some guys on business on the music. Then I wasn't doing things the right way, so I took a significant loss, in the street. So there was these things kind of piling up, but people would talk about me, and then I feel like that was also God molding me for my reaction. I learned to not even react, right?
Yeah.
And then now I look at even these days when people say something about me, even my ex, she recently popped up calling me her abuser or whatever. I don't even say anything, because as long as I know the truth and God knows the truth, God gonna make it right. I ain't got to worry about it.
Right.
I just got to keep living my life. And then I ask people, I'm not a big comparison person at all, but if you just look at my life, man, are you ever around me and my wife, or me and my family, or me ever? I'm not a negative person at all, and
right.
I'm genuine, and I have true bliss. Ain't nothing really. I don't fake at all about.
You don't
me.
have to.
Yeah. So what you see is what you get. Even me sharing this stuff. I don't know who's going to view this, but once it's recorded, it's out here for the world.
Yeah, well, and that's what we want, because,
exactly.
see, nobody wants to talk about this.
Right.
They just want to talk about the things that, especially when it's about them.
In this day and age, everybody wants to put, especially with social media, everyone wants to put it out there like they're just on the up and up every single day.
Yeah, everything is perfect.
And it's not. So to touch on what you said, Rick, and what you taught me, is let God handle it, or or just don't say nothing at all. If you're not a person, that's spiritual or whatever, the best reaction is no reaction at all.
Give them 50
None
feet.
at all. That's it. And keep doing your thing, because what anybody else thinks or judges you on, I told my wife the other day, she said I should post it. I post something. I try to post one motivational quote a day or something, whether it's out of my head or I'm inspired by someone else to put it in my own words. But I said, everybody that's judging people must be perfect. You know what I'm saying?
And I don't believe that. I don't believe that for 1 minute.
And I don't judge.
I also want to get this in before we run out of time too, man. The rapping.
Man, it's funny. I've been on that. I just did a show recently. I felt like it was kind of getting me, ready. I got this. So there's an artist named Finesse 2 Times. He has a couple cities in Midwest. He's doing during the weekend, and I'm on all 3 shows.
Wow.
So,
okay.
We'll be in Minnesota in July 24th, and then we'll be in Sioux City, Iowa, the 25th, and then we'll be in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the 26th. Doing my music, which is something I've always been passionate about. And that's really another business I have.
That's what I'm saying. And that's that was why I wanted to get that in.
Yes, sir.
Because not only did you come out, as you say, had to climb up to the mud.
Man,
you went in the mud when you got there, and you started a moving company, a remodeling company, rapping.
Yes, sir.
And you're being a productive person in society. See, and that's all coming from where society would like to say you ain't got a chance.
Yeah, it came from the cards stacked against me, whether it was circumstances or the cards I stacked against myself due to choices. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And see, and that's all I'm trying to get across. That's what this whole show is about, man. I want people to see the hard times don't have to be forever.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's some choices that we can make after we make these bad choices to put ourselves in some very difficult situations. And I know there are people out there saying, well, if you don't make the bad choices, you don't go through the... Man, you know what? Man. The next time somebody say that to me, I'm going to give them 50 feet because even though, and this is my personal opinion, even though a lot of people may not have went to prison, may not have ever been in trouble with the law, but I refuse to believe, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but I just refuse to believe that everybody that's never been to jail ain't never done nothing where if they got caught, they would have went to jail. I don't care if it ain't no more than going to a social dinner and having a few drinks,
right?
And you made it home safely.
or making or running a red light or a stop sign. You know, it's just or jaywalking. You know,
That's
like
all I'm saying, dude.
and that's it.
Ain't nobody perfect, man.
Nobody.
And I'm not going to buy into that. And if people don't agree with me on that, fine. All I need is 50 feet, and I'll give you 100. Right. Because I'm not going to buy into this perfect stuff.
Well, you know you know the saying, don't judge me because you sin differently than I sin. You know
right?
What
Yeah,
I'm
sin.
We all sinners.
Right?
Ain't nobody perfect on this earth.
But I've seen people that have managed to avoid the criminal justice system really feel like they have lived a perfect life.
Right.
I ain't buying that.
And you know, I let them do that because, you know, the other thing is God has a way of humbling you. The world has a way of humbling you. The universe has a way of humbling you, you know, and that's not for me, though. I don't wish nothing bad on anybody.
Right.
But, you know, that's why I don't judge anybody, you know,
right.
like, and that's the thing. People judging me, you know, I've been laughed at when I did have, you know, had the little car and, you know, when I finally got another car and it wasn't my favorite. But now I'm in a brand new truck. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that's the other thing. There's a flip side to it. Now I get snub nose, like, how is he driving that truck? You know?
Right.
And I love to sell people everything legal over here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
everything legal
over here.
Hey, I don't even want a red cent illegally. You know what I'm saying? So everything's legal. And I was telling one of my guys the other day how many people, you know, claim to be doing illegal things, but the guy working the 9 to 5 got more money than him.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's just a different day and age. It's a different mind frame, and it's also just about choices and decisions, man. You got to do things the right way if you want to win in life. I got another business I'm working on, man. I ain't gonna say too much, but it's called L7. Now, I will say that, and it's EL, the number 7, EVEN. You know, I already got the website and everything, but L7 and really what my the definition is basically square business. You know, we're making the square business look cool, not the and you know, I don't look like a square person, but I want to be square. I want to be the nerd. Whatever you want to call it. That's me, because guess what? That's what helps me succeed. Not the trying to, you know, when these customers or clients I talk to want to do business with me, I don't be like, oh yeah, man, I'll be there, and me and my homies can take care of you. Like, you know, when I had to tell guys that I work with, employees that, or youngsters, like, man, don't be so cool that you cool yourself out of an opportunity. Correct. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's about speaking with education. You know, speaking. You know, nobody has to know my background. Nobody has to know I came from the streets, and 99% of the people I deal with don't know that, right? Because I don't carry myself that way.
And I think that's a good way to wrap this show up, man.
Yes,
because, sir. Everybody, I hope y'all have really paid attention to what we've talked about, because we're not justifying our mistakes. We're just trying to give inspiration and hope to people that have made some mistakes. They feel like the world has turned their back on them. No one believes in them. We're just trying to encourage you and give you a living example of two people that have went through a lot of adversity, and we still managed to come out of this thing with our head up. Yes, I want everybody to keep their head up. I want everybody to be successful. And I'm gonna wrap this show up the same way I do every week. Every day you blessed to see, you got to look like somebody, and do that for yourself.
Yes, sir.
We'll see y'all next week.